we will get started then. Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Public Health's virtual education series, Wazooki Wo Ehi, Family Conversations. I'm Jamie Decora, Public Health Worker Supervisor, joined today by Renelle McKernan, one of our public health nurses, who will help me moderate today's session. The goal of the series is to gather, learn, and share about Ho-Chunk culture, resources, services, and the connection to health. In public health, we focus on prevention, promotion, and the protection of health and well-being of our communities. Health and well-being are rooted in many aspects of our life, from our physical body, our mental health, our spirit, and the environment we live in, and much more. During these sessions, we will explore topics that can impact our health and well-being. Together, we will learn about tools and resources to improve our health and the health of our communities. Today, we are acknowledging April for Alcohol Awareness Month, and we have with us today Selena Lemieux, behavioral health clinician who serves the Wittenberg and Nakusa communities. We will have about 45 minutes for Selena's presentation, followed by a short Q&A. Please use the chat function to enter any comments or questions for our presenters, and Renelle and I will monitor the chat throughout the presentation. You can also come off mute during the Q&A and ask questions yourself. Any questions we do not have time for, we will email responses back to the group. As always, this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Department of Health website and Facebook pages. Everyone, please welcome Selena.
Okay. Can you see my presentation okay?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. So as Jamie said, my name is Selena Lemieux, and I am a behavioral health clinician, aka a mental health counselor for the Ho-Chunk Nation Behavioral Health Division. So I'm really grateful to be here and have the opportunity to talk about alcohol awareness. So as Jamie stated, April is Alcohol Awareness Month. So this month is dedicated to increasing understanding around alcohol use, reducing the stigma, and also increasing and encouraging more conversations about prevention, treatment, and recovery overall. So my presentation will align well with the purpose of Alcohol Awareness Month. This topic can be very personal, and people come into this conversation with a lot of different views, a lot of different experience and such. Some people may not have had much around alcohol. Otherwise, some people may have been impacted very closely. So there's no wrong or right place to be with this conversation. It's not about any judgment. It's simply about awareness. So as we're more aware, we're able to reflect on the conversation as well as making more intentional choices. I forgot to switch my slide. Sorry about that. Okay. So to start off with the question, where do you see alcohol most normalized in our everyday lives?
For me, I see it normalized in a lot of our communities that people have alcohol at their children's birthday parties.
Oh, yep, that's a big one.
Just hanging out on the weekends, I feel like a lot of activities and being social, you also include alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. And so that goes into the culture of Wisconsin. So we are not just known for the cheese, we're also known for being a big drinking state. And we see alcohol being associated with a lot of different things like social events, sports, any type of gatherings, celebrations, so birthday parties and stuff. It's truly everywhere. And it's also normalized as a form of stress relief. Like, oh, at the end of the day, I'm just gonna have a drink to relax. So it's hard when it's normalized in so many different contexts. So this is between social use of just being drinking socially, and then it becomes a habit. So it blurs that line between what's considered to be healthy and then unhealthy patterns. So that can lead down to coping as well as an alcohol dependence. So this is why these conversations are so important when something is normalized, because when it's so normalized, we don't often take the time to pause and really question it. So oftentimes when people are making decisions around alcohol, they're not necessarily doing it with full awareness. We're doing it based off of what we're seeing in our environment, the habits, as well as just overall normalized in our family or our friend groups and different things like that. So now we're going to talk about what alcohol does. This is huge with how alcohol affects our brain as well as how it affects our body. So, alcohol is classified as a depressant, which essentially slows down our central nervous system. So, slowing down our body, slowing down our brain. And one of the areas that are impacted in our brain is our prefrontal cortex. And that's the part that's responsible for our decision making, our impulse control, as well as our judgment. So this part is what often people say is, oh, I wouldn't normally do that when they're intoxicated. And that's actually true because their brain's ability to pause and actually think things through is reduced. So alcohol also affects our memory, our sense of coordination, as well as our reaction time. And then we have what people call blackouts. So that is where the brain does not store a memory. So people have no recollection of what happened that night or whatnot. One part that doesn't get talked about enough is that alcohol doesn't help stress or anxiety. So it temporarily lowers our inhibition, which is the part of our brain that tells us to like stop and think before we act. So in the moment, it feels like a sense of relief. So people will often say like, oh, when I drink, my anxiety is non-existent. However, that just means that those emotions are underneath the surface and they're actually more amplified. So when someone's already feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious, angry, or even if they're drinking because they're grieving, alcohol tends to intensify those emotions over time. So another part is sleep, that people tend to pass out pretty quickly under the influence, but it actually disrupts the quality of sleep. So especially like the REM, like that's that deep sleep that we get into. So that's important for processing our emotions, our memories, that is highly impacted. So alcohol lowers our inhibition, but it also lowers our ability to cope with daily stressors, cope with anything that we have going on. So instead of solving the problem and facing it head on, it just delays it. And it oftentimes makes the problem bigger over time. So this is where our brain starts to associate alcohol with relief because we get that momentary feeling where, our anxiety isn't there, our stressor seems to quote unquote disappear. However, we run into a problem where we choose alcohol, like it's our choice to a point where we feel like we need it. We feel like we need it to be social. We need it to help us feel less stressed out. So that shift happens over time. So those are some of like the short-term effects as well as some of the long-term effects. I want to get into more of the long-term effects that can be pretty significant as well as more serious over time. So we have liver damage, including cirrhosis of the liver, and then mental health concerns. So this, like I said, it increases anxiety, it increases depression over time. So we get that momentary relief, but then over time that it just ends up building up. We get our brain changes in how it functions. The tolerance, the same effect that we needed before, we actually need more of it. And it can essentially build up that dependence where it became a choice and then now it doesn't become a choice, where we feel like we need it to function and then our body can become physically dependent on it. So understanding both the short-term effects as well as the long-term effects helps us make more informed choices. So it shows that it's not just in the moment, but this affects us over time. This part is about why people drink. So this part is important for understanding that alcohol use isn't just fine, it's okay to have a drink to not a problem, or to, to a problem. So it's not just like here or there, it is a spectrum. So this is oftentimes people start out drinking socially. So just for celebrations or gatherings or just being able to relax. But then that ends up shifting into something more frequent. That's where we shift to more of a habit. Then over time, people like to see the relief that they get. Sorry, will tickle in my throat. And then it can become a coping strategy. And we'll get into coping strategies later in the presentation. So this is why awareness is so important. So we just don't focus on the question, do you drink? We need to be shifting our focus of why do I drink? What are the reasons? What are the underlying reasons? Are we doing it because we're stressed out? Or are we doing it because we're drinking socially and it helps with our anxiety? So really looking at those underlying reasons for drinking. So some of the common reasons people drink is stress relief. Well, life is stressful, and that's completely understandable. That's part of our human experience. Emotional avoidance. Emotions are hard to deal with, and it really takes time to process stuff, stuff from our childhood, stuff from adulthood, those type of things. So it can feel easier to just avoid it. Social comfort makes people's anxiety disappear so they feel more comfortable in situations. It just becomes a habit or routine. So it's like, okay, it's Friday night. This is my routine. We go out every Friday night. And another one is boredom or loneliness. Not much to do. So why not drink? And none of these make someone bad. These are all ways that people are coping with a human experience, coping with emotions, coping with stress. So it becomes a problem when we're utilizing alcohol in place of more effective coping skills that are healthy for you, that help rejuvenate us and help our mental health. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the impact alcohol misuse has on Native American communities, including the Ho-Chunk Nation. When we talk about higher uses of alcohol, we need to understand the reason why. The reason why is so critical to understanding the history. So the reality is that alcohol was introduced through colonization. So right along tied in with trauma. So we're talking about the forced relocations, the boarding schools, the loss of language and culture, and disruption of family systems. What makes family our support system, people who are there for us. And then overall systematic oppression. So the barriers that were built into the system that affected access to resources, opportunities, support, those type of things. So those experiences may have happened in the past, but they're still present today. The impact is still felt amongst people today. So when we see higher rates of alcohol use within our Native American communities, we have to recognize that it's not an individual weakness. It is about pain that was not able to be processed. There was not a safe place in order to process pain. And the coping strategy that was used during that time to process the pain was alcohol. So this was a direct response to dealing with the pain. So when people are hurting, people cope. When people are dealing with the human experience that's difficult, dealing with everyday things, we cope. So the coping isn't the problem. So how we cope is truly what matters. So this is where this is considered a maladaptive coping skill, but it's still a way to cope with the stress, with the trauma, with all of those really heavy emotions. So coping can fall into two different categories. So we have maladaptive coping, which is like the unhealthy coping skills. And then we have adaptive, we have healthy coping skills. So the maladaptive coping skills, these are the things that help us in the short term. So short term, we feel that relief, but then it can cause harm over time. So this is where we see the alcohol use or even substance abuse overall, the avoidance where we don't want to face it. So it people often have there's a myth with mental health that if we don't address the feelings, if we act like they're not there, then they don't exist, which is not true. Isolation. People just want to want to be around people of support or anything like that, or be around anyone who could help. So we end up isolating ourselves because that's easier to handle. End up numbing ourselves, suppressing our emotions. So these are all maladaptive coping skills. And they work temporary, but they don't resolve what's underneath the surface. So it's that temporary relief. Then we have adaptive coping skills. So healthy coping skills. So talking with someone, getting active, some movement as we move around and stuff that helps release some stress and increases our endorphins, all that good stuff. Having some creative outlets. So whatever that looks like, if people like to draw, people like artwork, writing, any sort of mindfulness technique. So this is where we focus on the present moment, not about what's stressing about the future, not ruminating on the past, truly just being in the present moment. And you're being grateful for the present moment, looking at life around us. We live in such a fast-paced world that it's often hard to slow things down. So this is where mindfulness comes into play. Another one is being able to maintain or set and maintain boundaries. That one's really hard. So as we talked about before, drinking is normalized. So oftentimes getting invited somewhere that might be something drinking related, going out to a bar, hanging out with a friend. And if the goal is to separate yourself from that, that's where you have to maintain some boundaries. No, I can't do that anymore. I'm sorry. So that would help our mental health. And then engaging in any community connections. So there was a lot of loss of culture. So this could be a part where engaging in community as well as cultural events. So I want to be clear with the maladaptive coping skills, that gives us that temporary relief. So with the adaptive ones, that takes time to feel a sense of relief from it. And it's something that we have to work towards building over time. So when it comes to the coping skill of alcohol use, we're not eliminating coping because we need ways to cope. We're just learning different ways to cope that help support us rather than hurting us in the long run. So for the group, is there any coping skills that people are currently practicing now? Oh, journaling. Yep, that's a good one. So oftentimes with my clients, like that's one of the first things that I do is I identify their coping skills. Because as we talk about, everyone has coping skills. We all have ways that we cope with everyday struggles. So it's identifying the coping skills and helping people realize, is this helpful for us? Is this a healthy coping skills? Or is it something that's unhealthy that keeps us in this pattern of anxiety or depression? So it's really looking at that. And then when you might realize you don't have a lot of healthy coping skills. So really looking at that of what that looks like for you. What are some interests that you have? What's something that you've always wanted to try that you just haven't gotten the chance to do it? You know, there's never a timeline on learning a new skill. So crocheting, learning how to bead, um, running a marathon, or walking a marathon. I don't know. That might be someone's thing. So there's always different ways of coming up with different type of healthy coping skills. Oh, gardening, that one's a good one. It's a long process, and then you get to reap the benefits of all the delicious fruits and veggies that you get to grow. Okay. Oh yeah, painting, beading, and yep, coping as well as grounding yourself. I'm glad you said that. Being able to ground ourselves, that's really important for our mental health. So I wanted to take a moment to share something personal that connects me with this topic. So on March 24th marked the 15th anniversary of my mom passing away from cirrhosis of the liver due to alcoholism. So losing her gave me a real understanding of the impact of alcohol, and not just on one person though. That affected our whole family, the relationships, and affected generations. So that was a huge influence as to why I chose to become a mental health counselor. So it showed me awareness, alcohol awareness, how important it is to have a support system, people who are there for you, and how important it is to have conversations like these, because we want to bring the awareness to it so we can recognize the patterns and things that are going on before it gets to the point where our bodies are struggling and there's no way to turn back. So having these conversations is extremely important. So I share this story so I can honor her because it's something that I carry with me. And to also bring a human side to what we're talking about today. You know, this is a real life problem that affects our communities. Each one of us may have been affected some way or another, whether it's a friend or someone that we know or a close family member. So in this picture is my mom holding me in the pink shirt with the big old eyes, and then my sister, and then my gaga. Okay, so now we're going to shift our focus to recovery. So, a question for the group is, what do you think makes change or recovery difficult?
routine of like your daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So same friends. Yep. Continuing the same patterns. Yep. Yep. Easily accessible for sure. And also the part where people are like, well, it's legal. And so then it normalizes alcohol abuse. Okay. So recovery is not easy, and oftentimes it's misunderstood. It's not as simple as just stop drinking. There's a lot that comes with that. So it's facing the emotions that people are avoiding. So as we stated before, people use it as a coping skill to avoid emotions. So in recovery, you got to face that. Those emotions didn't just go away. Those emotions intensified and they're still there. So stopping drinking means that you got to face that. Changing the patterns, changing the patterns that have been in place for a long time. I don't work specifically with substance abuse because I'm not licensed in that, but as a mental health counselor, substance abuse comes up. And I hear so often of how young this starts, of hanging out with family and starting as a kid, starting preteen years. So changing patterns that have been in place for a long time. Some people's exposure to alcohol is at a very young age. Next is rebuilding routines and changing environments. And sometimes it's, like I said, it's part of the routine. Like Friday night, it's the weekend. So now it's changing that part of it and also changing environments. This includes navigating different triggers. So this is working with people of what what triggers you. And sometimes that's, well, I can't drive the same way home because if I pass this store, that's where I went every day to go buy my alcohol. Well, now we got to figure out a different route for you to go home so you don't pass that store or another store, especially when it comes to early recovery, that we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those things as well as recovery over time, over time. So making sure that we're addressing new triggers as they come up as well. So you can lose your social connections and also spaces that are closely tied with alcohol use. So that's losing friend groups, losing having to distance yourself from family to be truly changing a huge part of your life that you once knew. Another big part is rebuilding relationships. So during alcohol addiction, there's a lot that comes with that. There have been a lot of negative things that happened, a lot of bridges burned. So facing that is a huge part of that, where we're rebuilding some of those relationships with people that we hurt. So that's an important piece. And then learning new ways to cope. So like we said, the emotions are there. They may be intensified. So now we have to figure out, how do we cope with this? Because the way that we used to cope with alcohol, we're not doing that anymore. So now we got to find healthier ways to cope. All of this is really hard. And a coping tool is a coping tool, even if it's unhealthy. So during this time of recovery, people experience a lot of different emotions, feeling cravings, feeling triggered, feeling out of place overall. Because now we're finding new settings, new areas that we're going into that we didn't go into before. And ultimately questioning if it's worth it. I hear that a lot. People are saying, well, I thought when I got sober that everything would be better. Where's all the good things that are coming? Because I feel a lot of negative. I feel a lot of emotions, I feel a lot of heavy emotions. I'm feeling really triggered. I don't feel accepted. So there's a lot that comes with recovery. And recovery isn't linear. It's not, okay, you get sober, this is the starting point, okay, here you go, this is the end point, and then you live a happy life forever. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of setbacks. And progress doesn't look the way that people expect it to look. And that can be pretty discouraging to people. So the difficult moments don't erase the progress. Progress is good. It's truly a part of the journey of recovery. One phase that often comes up in recovery is one day at a time. Take it one step at a time. Because looking too far ahead, looking at the future, that's scary. It's scary for anyone to think of, well, what is your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, your 20-year plan? When there's so many unknowns in the future, our anxiety goes to the roof, and that's scary and also overwhelming. So we try to reframe the goal to be, today I'm making an active choice to be sober. Today I'm making an active choice for this to be different. Today I'm showing up. Or today I'm trying. So even if you or someone that you know are struggling with alcohol, just know that you're not alone. That there is support out there. And change is possible. It's scary, but it's possible, even when it feels really hard to handle. This next one is about support and resources. Support can look different for everybody. So there's a couple different options here. First one I've listed is therapy. So therapy can be scary. I've worked with quite a few people who it's their first time in therapy, and it's uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. People are vulnerable. People are talking about things that they've tried to suppress. So in therapy, this is a space for you to be able to process emotions, understand the patterns, understand what kept you in this cycle. So when you're talking about the cycle of addiction, the cycle of anxiety, cycle of depression, what are the coping skills? They're the coping skills that you use to get through a really tough time. And then understanding, what are the triggers? There's different support groups. So AA is a common one. I hear a lot of resistance when it comes to AA initially. But it's truly a place to share experiences, to be there around people who are going through recovery. Because as we just went through, recovery is hard. And sometimes it can be difficult for people to understand recovery when they haven't gone through it. So those feelings of not feeling worthy or feeling out of place or not even knowing how to navigate a social situation without alcohol, it's all really hard. So having support groups, really helpful for having that shared experience and then also that accountability. So support groups, you can have a sponsor, someone to hold you accountable. You can also do cultural events. Cultural events are community healing spaces. So as we stated with the historical trauma, generational trauma and such, reconnecting with that cultural identity, reconnecting with traditions, and gaining back that support system that was once taken from us. So those are all ways that can encourage healing. Reaching out can be one of the hardest parts though, but it's also one of the most important parts. And understanding that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you became aware of what's going on and that you gain the strength to reach out for help. And not knowing where to start, that kind of big picture, what are the future goals? Every small step matters. So even if that's talking to someone that you trust, or even scheduling an appointment. So you're scheduling an appointment with behavioral health, or you're scheduling an appointment with your primary doctor to see what's going on, or even just attending a meeting. Going into a meeting, even if you hate it, you went. That's progress. Or even gathering the information. So if you have the information, knowledge is power. So once we're able to gather that information, that's a step. That's a step in the right direction. At this stage, you don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be willing and have the strength to be able to take the step forward to get the help that you need. So we have the sober celebration dancing through the decades. So this is a community event, an event to experience connection, joy, a sense of community, a support system, and a celebration that does not have alcohol into it. It's alcohol-free event celebrating sobriety. So this is a place where you felt uncomfortable for, out of place before. This is a place where you can feel empowered around people who are going through a shared experience. And it might be new, it might be scary. Overall, it can be a really powerful experience to engage in these different type of community events. So as I wrap up, I want to leave you with this question. What type of relationship do I want to have with alcohol? Not one that's based on things that are normalized, not based on what people around you are doing or what people think is okay, not okay, people think is cool, but what's based on what supports your well-being, your goals, your mental health, your physical health. If there's one thing that you take away from this, I want you to take away awareness creates choice. So as we're aware, we can intentionally make a choice for our health, for our future. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for engaging in this conversation and being a part of this.
Thank you, Selena, for your presentation today. Does anyone have any questions for Selena today? Or comments? Not seeing any, I will close this out. Pete and Gigi, and thank you all for joining us today. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be available on the Department of Health website and Facebook pages. We look forward to seeing everyone not only hopefully this Saturday at our Sober Prom, Dancing Through the Decades at House of Wellness from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. But we look forward to hopefully seeing everyone next week, Wednesday as well. April 22nd, we will have Kathleen Clemens on, the Ho Chunk Nation exercise physiologist, with her session titled Getting Off the Fence. You can use the same link today to join all future sessions. If you would like to add the recurring WebEx link to your calendar, you can email Renelle and I, and we will forward you the invite. We also want to hear from you, and we ask that you please take a few minutes to complete our feedback survey. Renell has put the chat in the link already, and you can also reach out to Renell and I with any feedback, any ideas for future sessions, or if you yourself would like to present on anything in the future. Our emails are also in the chat. Once again, I thank everyone for joining, and you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much, Selena.